Hi, Qilin here. In this tutorial, I'll be sharing some advice on how to improve your line art. I'll be talking about line confidence, line weight, and also vector layers in Clip Studio Paint that'll help any beginner looking to draw digitally. Drawing great lines means expressing something clearly, and to draw something clearly, there needs to be confidence. When you make line art, it's important to avoid making hairy or wobbly lines. This means your hand may feel unused to the sensation of drawing digitally, and a lack of confidence will lead to these kinds of lines. Compare this with line work that is a little more confident. It is much clearer and more pleasing to look at. Don't be afraid if you find yourself drawing wobbly or hairy lines at first. It's important to note that Clip Studio Paint also allows you to cheat a bit with line art by using stabilization settings. You can find them pretty much under any brush setting. There's some freehand exercises that can help train your hand-eye coordination and muscle memory. The first exercise is to draw many short parallel lines. As you can see, you can try this horizontally or vertically. Try to keep the size of the lines consistent. In this exercise, you're just using a bigger brush size, and you can start practicing controlling with pen pressure. Draw this curvy line in the canvas while alternating between thick and thin. Try to fill the whole canvas with this repeating shape. This next exercise is repeating circles. This one is a little more difficult as it's working with curved lines, but it's just about repeating the same shape and trying to keep the size consistent. Again, just fill out the whole canvas with this shape. If you want to practice with pen pressure, you can make one part of the line lighter and the other side darker. And this last exercise is a lot harder than it looks. I call it flower circles. You basically draw a bunch of circles and then a dot in the middle of those circles. And you just draw petals coming out from that center dot until it becomes a flower, and trying to keep within the confines of the circle. Overall, when it comes to line art, I would just have to say, be patient, take your time, and remember that Ctrl-Z is your best friend. I do want to add one more thing. To be confident is to know what you're doing. In order to do that, it's incredibly important for beginners not to rush the sketching stage. Out of these two sketches, which would you feel more confident drawing line art on top of? It's much easier to add line art to a clean sketch, as opposed to a rough sketch. Line weight refers to how thick or thin a line is. Line weight also plays a role in a variety of expressions. For example, the thicker the line, the closer it feels, and thick lines also give more of an impression of shadow, whereas thin lines give more of an impression of light. Now, let's talk about intersecting lines. If you grab some stuff in your room and pile them together, you can see that many of the intersecting points will stand out. Here I pretty much just traced over the photo, and you can see that the lines look good, but they could be better. If you want your drawing to look a little more dynamic or a little more grounded, you can add a heavier line weight to the intersecting points and overlapping areas to give just some sense of depth and shadow. Thicker lines can also be used to bring focus to certain areas. For example, on a character drawing, drawing the contour of the whole character brings focus to the silhouette. Or you can bring focus to parts of the character's clothes, or you can make separations between the character or an item. And the last thing I'll talk about are vector layers. Vector layers are a Clip Studio Paint specific thing that I've found to be extremely useful and time-saving, and they can help beginners quickly refine their lines. First, make a vector layer over your sketch. Make sure you can see the cube icon in the layer that you've selected. The first thing I find really helpful is, if you find that no matter what, your lines still have a kind of shake and wobble to them, you can use the Simplify Vector Line tool to smooth your lines. Another helpful tool is the Vector Eraser. Overshooting lines are helpful when you draw, In my case, I find it really helpful when you draw hair, but it always doesn't look as polished and it's always really troublesome to erase. So on vector layers, you can easily use the vector eraser to erase between intersections and clean up lines. And the last tool I'll talk about is the Adjust Line Width tool. There are two ways you can adjust a line. You can use the Thicken option to add line weight onto your drawing. So this really helps if your line work is kind of straight and narrow and doesn't have much variety in line weight. And maybe you just want to thicken the lines of those intersections that we talked about earlier. Or you can select Narrow to reduce the line weight on your drawing. So if maybe you went a bit too heavy-handed on some areas, you can still go back on them and fix them up. Okay, I hope these tips were helpful. Maybe you'll practice the exercises, I hope you do. In the end, nothing beats practice. Practice, practice, practice. But regardless, I hope my tips helped and happy practicing!